Janet Scott, when I first met you, I don't know, feels 100 years ago. You were this really impressive lone figure of a woman at the head of a pet food company. It was called Wellness, and before that it was called Old Mother Hubbard. And you ran the joint, and that was pretty amazing. There weren't other women running pet food companies. Now it's all these years later, your life and your businesses have gone through a number of transformations. I feel really grateful to be associated with you, to have you sponsor this show, to have me support the brand of Raws that you and your husband, Jim, and your sons run, because there's very few through lines in the pet industry, much less the pet food industry. A family that does something to their own standards, sticks to those standards. Then you had to step away from the pet food business, and we can talk about that in a minute. But when you came back, you decided, okay, I'm going to raise the bar higher for myself. Does it feel to you like you're Her Majesty on the throne of the pet food industry? I know you don't feel that way, but I think that about you. And I watched people at the pet conference come over to you like, "Oh, Janet, it's Janet." Like you're this special human who really represents a long tradition of pet food superiority. And do you think of yourself that way, or just go to work every day with Jim and you just get the work done?
No, I don't think of myself that way. I'm always excited to get out of bed in the morning and go to work. We both love to work and we're so blessed to be able to do what we're doing. So, no, I think I feel pretty normal.
I know. That's why I asked. It was a rhetorical question. I know you don't wander around with assistants trailing behind you taking notes, but it is a very interesting time for people with pets to decide which pet food to serve because so many make claims and so many seem similar. I guess aside from the formulation and the ingredients, which you are very much in control of, the fact that you give away 100% of your profits, I hope, is part of the stimulus behind your success, not only with the Ross brand, but with giving away $14.5 million in no time at all, relatively. Do you think that has inspired people to try Raws and then stick with it when they realize the ingredients are equal to your philanthropy?
I always hope so. It is disappointing at times when we'll visit retail stores and the associates in the aisle don't even realize that we sell 100%, that we donate 100% of our profits. Initially, we didn't even put it on the front of our bag because we wanted people to buy our food because of the quality behind it, not because of where we donate the
Right.
profit. But as time went on and people didn't realize it, we decided to put it front and center. But we really believe in good nutrition for an animal. I think it's really sad when most pet food companies start out that way.
Yes.
But as private equity money comes into the picture, it doesn't become about the animal anymore. It becomes more about the people behind it being profitable. For us, nutrition was the best. That was the most important thing when we started. And secondary was the profits. And I think as time went on, sometimes we take for granted or we get so used to that we do it that it's not,
Yes.
we just take it for granted. And then we have to remind ourselves in our team, we have a team meeting tomorrow, and we try to remind everyone, hey, what we're doing is pretty remarkable. And we've donated a lot of money to these causes, which we're so proud of.
Well, yeah, you should remind yourself. And that's the kind of humility for not even shouting it from the rooftops when you first started doing it, which was from day one. The fact that you think that people should be aware of what you're doing and be aware of why it matters, what's in the bag, what's on the ingredient deck. But people are rushing around. We all have too many things on our plate, too many ways to constantly be connected. So I think that to stand out, both for the quality of the ingredients and for the fact that you're giving away 100% of the profits that a venture capital firm would say, more profits, good for us. You'd say, oh, some profits, nice, we're going to give it to. And then you have this long list on your website. And those of you that are very curious, which I hope you will be, Rawz is spelled Rawz, like Z. So many service organizations, because both of your sons, incredibly bad luck that you guys say, no, we're going to make it all work, had catastrophic illnesses, or not illnesses, accidents. So one is brain injury and the other was spinal cord. Is that
Spinal
right?
cord injury.
And so you support the research into those events, those disagreeable things that can happen in people's lives, and the rehab, but also the animals that are raised and trained to support people living with those kinds of disabilities, as well as veterans with PTSD. At what point did you say, wow, we've got our sons back and they've got their lives back, and we want to celebrate those entities that made it possible and make ongoing life good for them? When did you come out of the haze of just saving them to say, let's do
I
something?
think that a big motivation for us was we had already partnered. When we sold wellness, we had already partnered with some of these organizations to
Oh,
give back. And then our son, Jim, with the brain injury, really needed a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
mm-hmm.
So we started Roz as just a small family business because I don't know if you realize, but when we first started, we actually had two formulas, a fish formula for dog and a chicken formula for dog. That's it. And
Wow.
three different sizes. So we had six little SKUs. We thought that because we had history in the pet food business with wellness, that people would automatically buy us. But I think initially people thought we were gonna that Jim and Janet had this little hobby and we would get tired of it and it wouldn't last. Little did they know that we now have, oh my God, maybe 120 SKUs because Jim is an idea guy and
Yes.
he's always scheming what the next thing should be. We have still a small team because we really do try to keep our expenses low so that we can donate more.
Yes.
But we decided when we started with Jimmy that we would donate 100% of the profits to give back and make a difference.
So did it get him out of bed in the morning? Is he now
Oh,
right by
yeah.
his father's side, scheming and steaming as well?
He's really smart. He wrote most of our website. He writes all our blogs. He does store demos. He has still some issues with memory and gets extremely exhausted. So he only works for us about 20 hours a week, but he also loves Roz and what we do and that we're giving back. So it
It's
really is a
pretty
team
great.
effort.
It's a shame that people in the aisles of the stores don't know, because you are the supporters of stores. You go back to that tradition, which was wellness and old Mother Hubbard. We're not going to sell, in those days, the big bad evil was Costco. So
Right.
you're going to only sell to pet food stores. Now, the evil, if you will, but of course it's a convenience, is everything online. But you support those independent pet stores because you think, I assume correctly, that's where people go to get information and support. My dog didn't like X, or my dog had the runs from Y. So what do you recommend? Which of these that you carry? Why do you carry them? Which shall I try? I think that's what we want from a pet store, because it is takes a family or a village to feed a dog. Some dogs, other dogs will just eat any old thing. Doesn't mean it's necessarily good for them. One of the things that really struck me about your food, in the olden days, people just made pet food. Nobody paid any attention to what was in it, really. Was the package cute or friendly, or maybe they ran some advertising? But you were part of that early wave that said, we're not going to use wheat and corn and soy. But those were ideas that everyone said, oh, why not? Or, oh, I didn't even know it was in there. Now there has been an issue about meal, animal meal. And I know that it's something not well understood by people. People think it should only be whole protein, not a meal made from boiled up protein made into something dry. I'm saying that in lay terms. Can you explain what animal meal is and why, for the most part, you chose not to put it in your foods?
We meals are generally they are rendered meals. They're cooked at higher heat for longer periods of time. And if you think about cooking a hamburger on your grill, if you cook it to a really high temperature for a long period of time, the protein in the amino acid profile gets degraded. It degrades the
Degrade.
protein.
And nobody wants it.
No, you need a lot of ketchup on it, right? To make it edible. But we use whole meats and dehydrated meats, which are the dehydration process is a lower temperature for a shorter period of time so that it maintains the quality of the protein.
So that is the main reason because of how meal is made. It's rendered, basically cooked down so it can then become usable in a different form than what it looked like when it started. And in theory, I think you wouldn't have to use whole meat, muscle meat, to make a meal. It could be any part of an animal to make a meal. Is that right?
Yeah, you sometimes don't want to know where it came from.
That's
So,
right. And it could just be the carcass. All the meat has
right,
been taken off and given to raws, let's say. Now the next company takes the carcass of whatever the beast is, and that
right.
gets rendered down into a meal, and it still gets called lamb, beef, chicken, or whatever the word is. I was once told that salmon, and it's interesting you started with a fish, and I can't remember the fish you use, but that in order for a company to have a line of fish food, fish dry food, that meal was necessary because the animals, maybe then there wasn't farmed fish, but the animals aren't available all the time, their bodies. So meal would have to be made in order to have a consistent supply of that protein. Is that true?
I think so. That sounds right. Our fish, yeah, the meats as well our chicken, for instance, in our
Right?
turkey meal, our turkey, dehydrated turkey and dehydrated chicken is actually human grade, but once it gets processed in for pet food,
That's right.
they can't call it human grade anymore. And I know that our salmon that we use in our fish formula is not farm raised, it's ocean caught, but that sounds correct to me.
It makes sense. So that it really depends on, do you trust the company? Janet and Jim can make a meal like you use rabbit meal because rabbits are not readily available. And rabbit is a really great food, particularly for cats, but for dogs too. Very delicious and nutritious and has a really great in profile of what's in it. But you can't
Right.
always get raw, fresh rabbit, right?
And for a limited ingredient diet like our LID rabbit, the cost would be prohibitive. So
Yes.
for that particular product, we do use rabbit meal because of the cost.
But you know where it comes from. You know where the rabbits come from, and then you are in control of how it's turned into meal. It's very
Right.
different than just buying meal from a supplier of pet food ingredients and then it all gets shipped to a central place and mixed together. I think that's a big part of the difference. You've now come out with air dried food. Now that's interesting to me because there was a time, again, back in your more early years, when there was a food that was referred to as baked and it referred to other kibble as boiled, I believe. Boiled, or I don't know what they said. It was like, oh, baked. That sounds delicious, like cookies. But
Right.
what is baked versus air dried, and why does it make a difference?
The baked versus the air dried. That's a really good question because I wish Jim was here to answer it.
Oh, yes. I
Um,
don't want to put you on the spot because you're not the woman stirring the pots. You stir the pots in a different way in the
yeah.
outside world. But do you
Jim's,
remember that food that was triangular shaped and was baked?
yeah,
And that was their claim to fame. And it wasn't circles, they were triangles,
right.
three-dimensional triangles, right? I don't think that
Our
food's around
aria
anymore.
dry is synthetic free. It's a great process. A lot of air dried companies use glycerin in their air dry to make it more pliable and softer for the animal because it becomes very brittle. And we don't use glycerin in our product, but our product is, because of the formulation, it is very pliable for the animal and not
Oh,
sharp and brittle.
so that's nice for your older dogs.
Oh, definitely.
I didn't realize that air dry meant it was somewhat softer, more
Well,
giving.
most air dried products out there are brittle, but the
I see.
companies that are not brittle use glycerin.
And glycerin's interesting because glycerin was something, without saying a brand name, but it was in that, and I do mean so-called dental treat that was full of glycerin in order to make it slip down the dog's throat.
Mhm.
Theoretically, it was to clean their teeth, but if it's slippery and glycerin covered or ingredient, then of course it's not causing any abrasion to the teeth. But it slips down the gullet better and doesn't get stuck there or in the gut. And it
Right.
seems like glycerin, which I think of it as Vaseline ointment, it's become the modern day antifreeze. Do you remember? Of course you do. From when you and I were young, and there was something called a Gainsberger, which I think might still exist. It had glycoline profit. I don't know what's in antifreeze
Yeah.
to keep it soft. So I think of glycerin as like the modern day antifreeze. Oh no, our food doesn't have antifreeze. It has glycerin. But glycerin is not actually supposed to be a food item, is it?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't sound too good to me.
It doesn't sound just quite right.
Right.
So when you have to decide of which of these very many dog training organizations, nonprofits that you give to, how do you evaluate them? Because you have such a great array of them on your website.
I do a lot of research actually. I go on to see if they're accredited. I check to see if there's any issues with the Better Business Bureaus. I like to see that the money isn't used for administrative purposes, salaries, things like that. I want to make sure that the money that our team works so hard to supply definitely goes into the right place. So, a lot of research. For us, we want to be partners with our charities as
Yes,
well. So, we hope that they'll put our logo on their website and
right.
that if they have newsletters, they'll mention Roz. And we really do a good job, I think, staying in touch with our charities. And many of them we've been partnered with as long as we've started, even though the first few years we weren't profitable. But we've been blessed to be very profitable since then. That would be the biggest thing, is really doing the research to make sure they're a good partner and a good fit for us.
So, one of the things that I think strikes some people about any service dog organization, whether it's for the blind, for PTSD veterans, for mobility, for what used to be called Canine Companions for Independence, and now it's just called Canine Companions, is that it says the dogs are free to the recipient, but they still have to raise a ballpark $25,000 for each dog. They have to raise it. So, what are your thoughts about that? I've never really been on the inside of that, but if you have an average person, they don't have a bunch of money and they don't have a bunch of friends with money. But is it done as a GoFundMe? And is that how it works?
I think that some people do the GoFundMe route. We donate money to these organizations, hoping that they'll lessen the burden on
Right.
families. So if a dog is, and some of the ones that we do donate to, the dogs are free to veterans, for instance. Many of them, actually, the dogs are free, but some of them, you're right, they have to raise the funds, and hopefully our donation helps defray that cost to the
Right.
individual.
Which makes sense. Does your son, who started out with an assistant dog, does he still use one?
No, actually, he never got an assistant dog. Our
Oh
son
my
Andrew,
goodness.
yeah, our son Andrew, this was all part of the process too, because Andrew was going to grad school. He's a high school math teacher. He's the paraplegic. And
Right.
he wanted to get a puppy. And he was living in a fourth floor apartment at the time in New Hampshire. And he said, Mom, Dad, I want to get a puppy. This was before we started Roz. And we rolled our eyes at each other and said, how about if we get you a service dog? And he rolled his eyes back and said, I don't want a service dog. I don't need one. I just want a puppy to jump in my lap when I get home from work. And being the person that he is, very stubborn, which has served him well, he did get a puppy. And he said, Mom, Dad, you've been talking about this new meal-free dog food you think you should come out with. You should come out with it and give part of your profits to providing service animals to people who can't afford them.
Wow.
So it was really part of that old aha moment that it gave us a reason to actually get back into business. Jimmy
Yes.
needed a reason, and we did it. All I could think of at the time was Andrew getting pulled out of the wheelchair by this crazy puppy,
Yes.
which I found out years later happened many times, but
No
I never
kidding.
heard about it at the time.
Wow. You mean because he had him on a leash and the puppy was just a wild child and
Yes,
untrained for the job, which tells you something about why service animals need to be rock solid because luckily Jimmy, it doesn't matter. He would just crawl his way back into the chair or find someone to
right.
help him get back. But for a lot of people, that could be devastating,
Devastating. You're
right?
right. Yes,
So, so we totally support the idea that you shouldn't try to have a non-service animal if you really are technically a candidate. On the other hand, he didn't want to take one from somebody who couldn't have managed a puppy. How did he housebreak this puppy in the
we
fourth?
actually sent the puppy to a trainer, and the trainer trained him,
Oh,
at least got him potty trained, and then Andrew got him back. So it worked out really well. And Sophie's 14 and she's still
wow.
hanging around.
Good for her. So she would just hang at home from him, waiting for him when he went to school.
Yes, and she would jump right in his lap. She's a big girl now, but she still jumps in his lap when he gets home from work.
Just what he wanted. He got
Right.
his dream.
I'm not sure I like her jumping in my lap when I come to visit, but
Yeah, that's the problem with some of us that have jumpy dogs and we've let them
yes,
express their jumpiness. I'd never had one until this Vizsla puppy. I'm like, this is how he needs to express himself. He wants to stand on his hind legs and put his arms around your neck like he's a
exactly.
monkey. So, what do? Do you say, oh, that's not good, that's not right? Or you say, I guess we'll limit A, the clothes we wear, and B, the number of people that we let come to the house because I don't know, some of us just think that the dogs rule and we want them to be as doggy as possible within limits. And
Right.
obviously, he feels the same way. He doesn't take her to school. He could have, right?
I don't know if they allow dogs in he teaches at high school. So I don't know. There's a lot of dogs now that actually go to school.
Yeah, but they have to wear a jacket. Now, of course, some of the ones that go with kids that are their ESA, emotional support animal, they're not really trained, just like some of the people flaunt the laws on the airplane. They just
Right.
want their dog with them. And if
Yeah.
they aren't fine mentally or emotionally, then they should have a trained dog, not just an unruly pet. But
Right.
I think that's a trend. But I guess Sophie could have gone if she were trained and wore a jacket saying service dog, do not pet. But then she
Right.
would spend all day lying like a statue, as they do, miraculously, when they're 18 months old. It's like, where are these dogs? I never see them
Right.
in real life. I see them in those situations. So, just with a minute left, are you going to come out with more than 120 SKUs? Are you two just unstoppable or what?
Oh, there's always something on the horizon.
Isn't that great? I will say you are the world's best advertisement for you can join AARP, but you cannot retire. Retirement is for old people, not for people young at heart and full of
Well,
spirit.
I think we'll both be around in our rocking chairs still working.
I absolutely stand behind that, and I will be rocking right beside you. I think what you do and how you do it is just wonderful. And that wants to serve a premium dog food, it wouldn't it be great to know that the money that they're making on your dog food is not theirs? They view it as belonging to other people, the people they give it to. It's a wonderful business model. It wouldn't work for anybody else but you guys, and you have it working, cooking like gas. So thank you so much, Janet, for being here. And send love to
Thank you,
Jim. I'm sure
Tracy.
he's back in the laboratory stirring up some new plan.
He's scheming something.
He is. Thank you so much, and give all of our best to your whole family. We're so glad you're all whole and together.
Thank you very much, Tracy. You have a great day.
And you.